Hello and welcome to the Ain't Shit Show.
I like that. I think that should be the intro.
We're just going to steal that intro from now on.
Yeah.
We're no longer going to do our cold opens. No more Western Kabuki. No more. We're just the Ain't Shit Show.
I'm certainly not going to top it. Yeah, I'm certainly not going to top it as an intro. So thank you so much to Ivy for joining us
problem.
on this episode of Western Kabuki.
Happy to be here.
I am Whack Nicholson as I've ever been. Juniper, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Things are good. Life is crazy, but things are good.
Yeah, still no Twitter account.
No, I'm still off Twitter.
There's hiring I think the Brace Belden joke from Truanon was a young Egyptian man, a twink to run the account and post it.
Yeah, I have a crackhead squadron of programmers working. They're working on version 1.2 of my account of my bot account now. That I'm paying them. They're in a cage in the corner somewhere. They're fine. They're working on it.
And to the people who are doing that work for free in our Discord, just think, eventually, we can merge Juniper's corporeal form with the account once the singularity hits. So you guys keep on plugging away.
That's wonderful.
Caleb, how are things on your end?
Oh, can't complain. Have a nice cup of tea, and I'm ready to talk about something that's going to fucking destroy my brain.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Because we have like a sort of we have a certain topic that we wanted to discuss today that we brought Ivy on to laugh at with us. But before we get too deep into the silliness, I have been doing a little bit of research, and I will just cite some of my sources. Couple of little I didn't like read any books for this or anything, but Judith Butler is an author I've read a little bit of. Susan Stryker is another. I also have already read in the past The Origins of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt and Anti-Semitism and the Jew by Jean-Paul Sartre, which are both excellent books on the topic of anti-Semitism, which is something I wanted to talk a little bit about, completely unrelated to the ongoing war in Israel.
We had this planned for like 3 or 4 weeks at this point. If anything,
I think even longer
they
than
crashed.
that. They stole our idea for an episode.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about what is being classified as anti-Semitism right now in the media. I don't even really want to talk about the state of Israel. I want to talk about Judaism and the relationship between Jewish people and anti-Semitism, which was the topic Sartre wrote about in Anti-Semitism and the Jew. Now, anti-Semitism is a type of bigotry, a power-based ideology of hate, but unlike other forms of bigotry like racism, anti-Semitism doesn't rely on ineffable physical characteristics as such. It will use the descriptions of Jewish people to say you look Jewish in this way, but who actually counts as a Jew doesn't really matter according to the anti-Semite. To the anti-Semite, a Jewish person is anybody who they say is Jewish. This is basically Sartre's thesis with anti-Semitism and the Jew. Bigotry against other groups, say racism against people of color in the United States, may lead to some people believing a young male who is not white may be dangerous in some way to the people around him. Bigotry against women may result in microaggressions, such as believing that a woman in a doctor's office must be a nurse or a receptionist, but it can also lead to police dismissing sexual assault allegations because they do not think women's consent is a matter for the law. However, anti-Semitism is more complex and speaks to a more specified hateful beliefs. The main difference between anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry is that it is necessarily eliminationist. To dislike Jewish people is to want to rid the world of them. Anti-Semitism views Jewish faith, the Jewish ethnicity, Jewish community as a problem that needs to be solved, a question that should be answered. This is because the first instinct of the anti-Semite is to show proof of Jewish treachery because they only wish a single conclusion to be drawn. If Jewish people are plotting against us, then the only thing is to attack them first. This conclusion leads to the elimination of all what they call Jewry, both foreign and domestic. All Jewish stereotypes of behavior and appearance flow from the belief that the world would be better off without their meddling. And meddling is the core concept of anti-Semitism, the belief that societal changes are somehow the province of Jewish people and their faith, ethnicity, as well as community. Sartre said the anti-Semite is afraid of himself, of his own consciousness, of his own liberty, his own instincts, of his responsibility, his solitariness, of change, of society and the world, of everything except the Jews. He is a coward who does not want to admit his cowardness to himself. This functions as a way to keep Jews subject to anti-Semitism, as they are forced to answer for their race and community for things they as individuals are entirely unconnected to. For this reason, Jewishness as such isn't defined by the practicing of faith, one's familial heritage, or even one's appearance. It is defined by the anti-Semite and is therefore inarguable. Perhaps you've never been to a synagogue, you've never kept kosher, you haven't sat Shiva, you haven't attended so much as a fundraiser for a swap meet at a Jewish community center. You may still be a Jew if the need arises that you become one in the eyes of some bully trying to seize political power. This makes anti-Semitism a fertile breeding ground for bad faith. This is the state by which emotion takes over the ability to reason. The conclusion has already been drawn, and therefore explanations can be whatever I want them to be. It is not unusual, Sartre says, for people to elect to live a life of passion rather than of reason. But ordinarily, they love the objects of passion: women, glory, power, money. Since the anti-Semite has chosen hate, we are forced to conclude that it is the state of hate as a passion that he loves. Acting in good faith requires that we protect our positions with inconvenient things like logic and evidence. But bad faith actors get to play. Oddly enough, in regards to anti-Semitism, it is singularized bigotry in this way. One may say Asians are bad drivers and sincerely mean it. They may act on it by avoiding other cars on the road if the driver happens to be of a certain ethnic origin. A police officer can give extra tickets to anyone that looks Asian to keep them off the road. But one does not need to believe that Asian people should be removed or that Asian people present an existential threat to non-Asian culture. This isn't true with anti-Semitism. The anti-Semite believes that the solution to Judaism can only be a final one, and this isn't endemic to any other kind of bigotry. Thinking that black people steal things means you want black people to assimilate. It's unlikely that a person can be convinced that because black people steal, we should remove all black people from all non-black society at the same time. Anti-Semitism would be unique in this way if not for another form of bigotry that is even now solidifying itself into a revised project of eliminationism. And that is what I wanted to read before we start talking about transphobia, because I see a lot of the characteristics behind anti-Semitism extant in transphobia, specifically the eliminationist rhetoric and the treatment of them as a separate from the rest of society.
No, I think that's like really spot on. I mean, how many times have we seen like insane posts online with like whatever social media? It doesn't matter. They're pretty much everywhere at this point of people like accusing trans people of being like in a shadowy like organization, like controlling things behind the scenes. Like I made a tongue-in-cheek post like a couple of weeks back before I got suspended about how I was in like a woke like shadow council working at Twitter. And someone else replied to me. I forget the name of the account, but it's like the hippo account, the purple hippo account. He like was riffing with me, and the libs of TikTok and a few other people like screenshot it and like genuinely took it seriously because it's like, oh, look at a trans person doing a shadowy like woke thing, like that just like scratches that itch in their mind.
Yeah, I think that the eliminationist rhetoric of transphobes is so close behind the hateful things that they say. You know, it's almost as if the elimination of trans people came first in their minds, and the excuses came afterwards. The grooming panic and everything follows their own sort of megalomaniacal need to remove trans people from mainstream society, which has led.
I mean, that's what always happens,
Yes.
though, with this kind of thing. Like, the same thing happened in fucking, like, Weimar Germany leading up to, like, after, once the Nazis took power. The same thing happens, like, the same thing happened kind of in Russia when they started persecuting gay people. Like, they kind of just put these laws and or policies into place and then kind of post hoc justify or post hoc rationalize why they need to be there, because that's when they start getting pushback, is when they actually start doing the thing.
Yes.
So like normal people will be like, hey, that's kind of fucked up for you to do. And then they'll have a myriad of reasons that don't make sense because they came to that logic after the fact rather than before.
Yeah, you say something.
Sorry to interrupt, but have we introduced Ivy yet?
We did at the beginning.
I don't remember if we
did at the beginning. Yeah.
We did? Oh.
Yeah, I
Never
introduced.
mind.
I introduced the show, pal. This is the Ain't Shit Show.
Oh, right. Sorry,
I
guys.
did that.
Yeah, Ivy did the intro today for us.
Back to silence. I apologize.
No, you're great.
Western
you're great.
Kabuki colon
You're
the Ain't Shit Show. Or actually, no, I actually reversed that. It's the Ain't Shit Show colon Western Kabuki.
or Western Kabuki and Ain't Shit Show saga. We're part of the book of Western Kabuki.
We are intertwined. We have Marcos on here. We've had him a couple of times now. We have you. It's no, we're intertwined. At this point.
So the existence of this like post hoc attempt to paint trans people as like in some way a threat is so strange to, I think, live through in real time. Like, we weren't really, none of us, the origins of modern anti-Semitism go back to like the 1880s. None of us were there for that. And now we're just watching people be like, trans people are bad. And if you're like, why? It used to be this like really hodgepodge mess of different bigotry. But now it's like they are putting drag queens into our libraries in order to make all of our kids trans.
And then you say, but drag queens aren't trans, and then they say, doesn't matter.
Why are you defending the grooming of children? They're doing the fascist thing of answering the next question. You have raised a question. They have pretended like they answered the next 3 questions, and they're answering the one after that.
I mean, and then Michael Knowles. I mean, he's a notorious example of him explicitly saying we must eradicate transgenderism. Those are his words, and he's still working at like the Daily Wire. He's like a pretty high profile guy.
Yeah, he's
in our culture.
He's on a lot of
politics.
I don't know which ones, but he's on a lot of those right wing shows, like right wing channel, like OAN. And I don't know if he's specifically on OAN, but those types of channels he gets invited onto as well. It's not just the sort of hug box that is the Daily Wire for people like him. It's like more mainstream ones too. But yeah, so June has done the very exciting work of pulling up some of these sort of paranoid fantasies of the transphobic in what people have dubbed transvestigation. So does somebody want to sort of explain what transvestigating is?
Yeah, so I can. So it's been, so it's kind of like a newer facet, I feel like, of our like online culture, and especially paranoia for people who like already kind of know what transvestigations are. So it's basically it's people. It's a type of person. It's like a community. It's not. I don't think it's like that huge. In particular, like transphobia, like, that's big time. That went big these days. But transvestigations are still kind of like on the sidelines of a lot of like the transphobic rhetoric. And basically it'll just be like people taking pictures of people who are cis pretty much most of the time, and rationalizing why they think they're secretly like a trans person and hiding it from society. So it's, we've talked about a little bit, like we've mentioned him before, the Rivellino, the like lines guy, the guy that like puts lines down on people's like genitals basically to
pussy facing the world.
Yeah, pussy face. Yeah, and that's kind of like I feel like it's very similar when I was like looking, because I've known about transvestigations for a while, but like when I was really looking at some of these photos, they'll like draw lines on people and they'll superimpose different things over people, and it's like, this is just like Rivellino, this is the Arrow guy, but just for like a different type of paranoia, which is incredible to me. And then so I put together,
at least, I mean, Rivellino's stuff is at least in a way proactive. He is like, this is the way the world could be if we all cared a little bit more. I mean, that's basically at the end of the day what he's saying. You may not like the world, the view he has for the world, but he is basically just saying we could make the world a better place. Transvestigators.
That is a step up of line use than they typically do with like flat Earth. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
That's really where the line use originated, was flat Earth guys seeing, see, it's flat. I drew a straight line in this paint.
There are worse people using lines for worse reasons.
Lines are quite sinister, I'm realizing. Like the paranoid brain really loves lines.
2 dimensions is where the danger zone is. 3 dimensions is where we're safe.
Yeah. I would like to, before we actually get into too many of these.
Yeah, so I put together
memes,
a little document, basically. Put together a little document of like just a little bit about transvestigations and some of the funny ones. I think, at least, they're kind of funny.
Yes. And before we get into the memes, I just want to ask everybody, who was the first person you were told was secretly a different gender?
Michelle Obama.
It was Michelle Obama?
It was Michelle Obama. I was hearing that shit on fucking like conservative radio when I was like 14.
Is that the same for you, June?
It's hard to say, because like I feel like I do remember that, but I feel like in my mind when I think first like transvestigation or first like this type of person, it's like Lady Gaga, because there was when she blew up on like in the scene with her like first music or whatever, everyone was talking about like, and I have examples, I have her on this, and Michelle Obama, people were like, oh, she has a penis, right? Like, oh, Lady Gaga's a transvestite. Like, I just remember that so vividly as a teen.
Yeah. What about you, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, it was Lady Gaga for sure. And I don't remember, I wish I remember who it was she was interviewing with. And
Anderson Cooper.
It was Anderson Cooper, yeah. And he says, people, why don't you just deny it? And she said, well, I don't care if people say that I have a penis. What difference does it make? And I remember that was like the first time I really kind of became aware of this being like a real social issue. I was like, holy shit, she's fucking right. You know what I mean?
And that was like in 2007 or 2008 or something. Like that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was about the same time actually then.
Oh yeah,
there's Michelle Obama stuff.
There's the timeline
and
link.
she just refused.
It was just,
he was basically like,
I came to mind a little bit more politically brainwormed, I guess. That's maybe the why of the way I am now.
I think because we're all similar ages, Lady Gaga is one that we probably heard, and Mike Obama is another one that we probably heard pretty early
Michael
on.
Obama, yeah. Friend of the show, Michael Obama.
The very first one I remember hearing as a kid, and this says a lot more about my childhood than I think anything else, was Cher. That Cher is secretly a man.
Oh shit! Wait, what's the theory on her? What's the? I didn't look into her.
She's tall.
She's
and
tall
she has
and
a deeper voice. It was basically the whole thing. And it was never that they were secretly trans. It's that they were secretly a hermaphrodite.
Yes.
And I also heard the same thing about Jamie Lee Curtis for a lot of my early life, because I watched a lot of like VH1 retrospective shows like I Love the 70s, and people were like, I don't know, even if she is a like the jokes in like 2005 were still like, maybe she is a hermaphrodite. I mean, Sierra's probably a hermaphrodite, and that was the other one that I heard a lot was Sierra, the R&B singer dancer person.
Mrs. Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, she's married to Russell Wilson. Yeah, she had broad shoulders, so she was also secretly a man. But or that Elton John was secretly a woman.
Oh
that
shit,
he was.
I've never heard that.
I love the reversal.
Yeah,
yeah.
He was
the
too ugly.
Rare reversal. It doesn't come out too often, but when it does, it's a real gem.
It was basically like he's too ugly of a woman to get famous to be a singer, so we're going to pretend he's a man.
It's kind of funny too, because it's always like the women are secretly men because they're hiding it and they're trying to disguise and trick you. And the men are secretly, the women are secretly men because they're too ugly to function in society. Has nothing to do with devious tricks or anything. We're just naturally repugnant. Like we just can't function if we have no beauty.
Yeah, ugly women famously do not exist.
Oh, what's an old lady, you ask? Ignore that. That derails my entire argument.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing is like that's kind of how a lot of transphobia is. I mean, you see the way that people talk about trans women. Like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, those trans men have it easy, but like when transphobia is like in the news, when transphobes will like try to rile up their base, they typically will talk about trans women. You know, like that's usually their go-to for a reason.
I mean, it's through the lens of like patriarchal male sexism, anyway, right?
Yeah,
because it's all about like, I don't secretly want to like go home with a dude or like whatever twisted fantasy these guys imagine.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. And that's what I feel like that's probably why, Ivy, you joke about that, like about the differences, but I feel like that is like kind of low key a part of it.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I was using a joke to kind of make a point. Like it always comes from this sort of like you're either like you're too ugly. I mean, and it's fascist rhetoric basically. It's like you're too ugly to function, but also you're so devious that you could become beautiful or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we're simultaneously like the greatest threat and also the stupidest people.
It's like the Hillary
Schrodinger's fetish.
Yeah. It's like the Hillary Clinton thing where like she has trouble opening a pickle jar and that's why she's like about to die, but also she commands like the greatest task force of assassins.
The body count list. the Clinton kill list.
Yeah.
I love the Clinton kill list so
Me
much.
too. Oh my god.
It's one of my favorite. Like I almost unironically believe it just because it's fun. Like
it's fun.
Only because it's
nice.
fun, not because it's real.
Refreshing it's refreshing of an idea that like somebody other than like Henry Kissinger could be just like comically evil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
he gets away with it because he's clearly made a pact with an ancient demon from the Empyrean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. He's a warlock from Dungeons and Dragons in real life. He made a pact.
He's been talking with demons in the warp for the last 100 years. he's a psyker in human form 20,000 years too early.
that one wasn't for me. I'm with the audience on this one.
I've been playing a lot of Warhammer 40k Dark Tide
I thought
recently,
it might be Warhammer.
and that means I've been on
you're too busy having
deep dive
sex?
once again through the Warhammer 40k lore Wikipedia.
Yeah. I've been
yeah.
getting laid and stuff, so I've been doing other stuff. That's all. Yeah. So what's up with these memes, June? What do you got? What do you got for us? Can you serve these on a steamy?
Can you explain
platter?
this first one?
This one's a lot. This is a crazy one to start with, Juniper.
This is just to wet our lips. This was just let me explain. So
this has got some numerology.
Yeah, a little bit of gematria.
Sure does.
So I didn't type a whole lot because I put this together. I like gathered all of this on here last night, but I was getting my car's oil changed and I was like, shit, I have to like put this together. So I like did my best while I was waiting. But so when I was looking for transvestigation like examples and people online that are like still actively transvestigating, I came across a couple accounts. And I was like digging through their media tab, seeing what they would post. And one of them, this first one, and I assume we'll probably provide this to our listeners somehow so they can kind of go through to see what we have. and what we're talking about. But this first one basically is just, I'm using this to illustrate that these people are fucking insane. These people are just like paranoid. They have like the craziest ideas just about society, about the way the world works. Like I've like looked at this image. It's basically so Donald Trump, he's making like a hand gesture. And then with that hand gesture, there's like a superimposed like eagle. I don't know. There's like some numerology going on.
Oh, okay. So basically, the hand, I couldn't tell if the triangle with the 33 in the middle was supposed to be over his hands. Like you're saying that symbol is supposed to be over his hands like that.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to indicate something.
There's a few images there over his hands.
Yeah, there's a lot happening here. Basically, I only had this here. This doesn't really have to do with transphobia or transvestigation like in any direct way, but I just wanted to like show what I found here as just like these are the people that we're dealing with.
I love numerology cranks.
Yeah. No, I love the guy in what's that Nathan Fielder show that came out recently? That one character in it that's I crashed my car, my Scion 99 going 100 miles per hour.
Going 100 miles an hour.
That dude.
Keep my blessings up. That
yeah.
The 88s here is also not lost on me.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that I'm just like, I think that's interesting.
Just a lot of interesting things.
That's neat.
I probably shouldn't have saved that to my phone. To be honest with you, I'm looking at this again. I'm like, shit. Why did I save this?
This is not only is
because you shitpost online, June. This is just what your phone looks like.
It kind of is.
I love whenever I post something like when they're like last thing that's saved on your phone, and it's an image of like Birdo getting Eiffel Towered by the Mario Brothers, and somebody's like, "Why do you have that on your phone?" And it's like, same reason we all do. What do you? I don't know.
Yeah. I think my most recently saved image is an AI generated art that my friend Alex made that is Jar Jar Binks flying a space plane into the future Twin Towers.
Oh, that was with I saw
like
a lot
while
of those.
Smiling and pogging at the camera, like pointing.
I think I saw one like that, but with like the minions. Like the minions were riding
Chris.
That's very good.
Chris, formerly of Eat the Rich, has done some really good 9/11 and some really good Kermit the Frog stuff with his.
He did. I think he was the one who did the Goku. 9/11 one, which I
hell yeah! I'm not a fan of AI art, but to be honest, some of those were.
I mean, fucking around with it and having Kermit the Frog do 9/11. Who's that hurting? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if there's any purpose for a journey or whatever, that's it.
I'm not selling it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I think it's a valid use case for it, though. Just kind of embellish, like adding Disney properties into like historic war crimes and disasters.
There's a lot of value in that for society.
Yeah.
There's so much that we can gain from that. So basically, that first picture, these are the freaks we're looking at. So the next page I have here, this is like just a sample of the type of stuff that they look for when they're deciding who they're going to transvestigate. What are the kind of features that they look at?
Okay, we got to talk about these one at a time, though, I think, for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no worries. I was going to take it slow.
Okay.
So this first one here, this one was pretty recent. I think just a month ago, like the one with the Tia Roberta like Twitter post. I saw this one circulating pretty recently.
Yeah, it was.
So basically, it's an image of a cis woman with, I don't even know where they got this from, but it's just like an image, like a superimposed over her face of a male skull, implying like, oh, if she was actually a cis woman, like this wouldn't fit. But I feel like with a lot of these things, it's like basically the point that we're going to get to by the end of this, which I feel like a lot of people already kind of know, is like human bodies are all like kind of different. There's not like there's not like a one body type. There's not like a one bone structure type of deal here that makes you who you are or makes people cis or trans. Like,
and what if you don't look at the way they've superimposed this skull onto the face, which I and many other people would and have pointed out, is not even close to lining up with her skull. Like the top of the diagram's skull is inches apart from the top of her skull, so it doesn't even match up. It looks like they tried to match the teeth, but then the diagram's teeth are too big. All this diagram really shows is that women have lower cheekbones and larger eyes, and male skulls have higher cheekbones and smaller eyes. But like
which I don't think is always necessarily true.
Of course not. Absolutely not. Like Vanna White has a bigger head than I do. That is just like a fact. It's not like there's no logic to this at all. There's no like attempt at making any sense at all with these people, which is, where you have to get to in order to actually become a real transvestigator is completely unconcerned with the constraints of reality.
All you got to do is find a couple diagrams from your son's 7th grade biology textbook and just really go at it. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of overhear some things about like different, your autistic son talking about like different archaeological finds, like the different like skeletons that they've dug up that are like 1,000 years old. And the only thing you take from that is that they were shaped differently. So you go on a Wikipedia deep dive and like infect yourself with all kinds of wild ass brain poison. And then you're like, oh yeah, V-shaped clavicle, that means it's a woman. I see you.
And that's like, you compared this a lot to like Whack in your opening to like anti-Semitism, which I totally agree. It's like a very nebulous.
It's the same thought process.
It is, but there's also a lot of parallels, I feel like, with like these people like wish they could bust out the calipers on some of these people.
Oh
like,
yeah, this is phrenology for sure.
Yeah, it's like a combination of all of this different like paranoia, like crank science hate, or not even science, like that we see here.
The hate is coming first for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Even with like with phrenology, with phrenology as like a being presented as a science, it's like, well, the reason it was being presented as a science is because these, wealthy white people in the South and Britain and stuff, they weren't able to accept the fact that black people were in a worse position because of things that white people had done on purpose. So they busted out the calipers, and it helped them feel better about like, oh no, they have the divot in their brain. That's why we did it.
It's not the slavery.
They have 3 bumps on the back of their skull, which is a sign of treachery.
So we did them a favor, is really what it comes down to. Like, that's so obvious why they did that. This is such a different thing. This is like phrenology mixed with just being a Karen, like asking for somebody's supervisor.
Well, because
I need the bones.
It's that
I need
same
to speak
line
with
of
the bones manager about the way you're treating me right now.
Exactly. But I mean, like, it's that same line of thought, but fed through the last like 50 years of American brain poison. You know what I mean? It follows like very similar ideas as like really any of the like crank ideologies that have come out of like the hippie wave into California. You know what I mean? Like, this is no different than like fucking, it has no like religious, like specifically religious aspects, but I think you could draw a lot of parallels with things like with this and like with fucking like UFO cults, talking about like fucking like the arguments between the grays versus the talls or whatever they call them, that are supposed to be like the ones that like the 6'5" blonde-haired, blue-eyed, like suit, like what do they call them? Like the Nords?
Yeah, they're
or
also
something
called
like that.
The Aryans. Like
the Aryans.
They call them that in some UFO circles.
All of that is like circled through like shit that the Nazis did to try to post hoc rationalize the fact that no, they didn't descend from black people in Africa. They actually descended from a different migration that came from North America, where the white people are. Like that is not at all founded in science and has no basis in reality, but like it fits their Volkish sort of like ideology, so that's what gets accepted. You know what I mean? It's like it has that same sort of like brain poison tinge to it, if you get what I mean.
I didn't know that part of the Aryan myth was that they came from the United States. So I'm wondering if you have any information, Ivy, on whether or not the Mormons vibed with the Nazis, because that feels like a match made in heaven.
I don't know about that. All I know is like the Aryan thing was a sort of reversal of what actually happened in history, which was Norse explorers basically pawn skipped all their way to the North America and like explored some shit, but there's not really some like great evidence for how far their reach was because it was so long ago. So they used that sort of convenience of ignorance and sort of back channeled that and said, well, because we don't have any evidence for their settlements before, that means they were just that much older, so they've decayed. You know what I mean?
Which is sick. That's
I love when a theory starts with, we don't have a lot of evidence for this, but...
Yeah, I don't have evidence for this, but if I did have evidence, this is what it would look like. And by the way, it won't look like that at all because of this very specific set of conditions I've laid out as to why the evidence cannot exist.
Those are always the best theories.
Yeah. And
it is. Yeah. I mean, they're cranks.
That is
it's not like the humanity is nothing but a series of cranks.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing is like something that Christopher Hitchens wrote about. Sorry to quote Hitchens, but he did talk a lot about like how like
more like shitchens.
Got him.
He did talk a lot about how like religion itself isn't as big of a problem as like religious thought processes, the ideas that like lead to things like totalitarianism. He classified them as religious, which is kind of stupid, but it also makes sense with what you're saying about like the sort of level of faith that people have in these kinds of supremacy myths of like,
well, yeah, because it's not necessarily that they're having like faith in it so much as they believe themselves and their own logic more than they're likely to believe
evidence
anything else. And that's super common. That's like if I had to say like what the majority of people do just for operating on the day to day, that's what you do. You see something, you interpret it how you have it, and that's the logic that you have until somebody like corrects you and you accept that correction, or until you see other evidence contrary. And this is usually the most effective one. You personally see evidence contrary to whatever belief you had set, and then you make that correction inside your own brain.
Yeah.
But like all of this is just like the logic works, and it's like most of these things are logically consistent. They're insane, but they are logically consistent. They don't conform to reality, but they are logically consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about Farrah Fawcett, one of the hottest women of the 70s.
Yes. So more of what we're looking at here. So what specifically it looks like in the case of trying to identify someone who is trying to appear as a cis woman but is actually a man, is they have a straight clavicle. So this is where they bust out the lines. This is where it hit me like, oh, this is like line type shit. So it's like straight across, like, oh, that's a male. Only
so straight clavicles, that's
like
a man.
Straight clavicle. And then it has a picture of Ryan Gosling, which famous actual woman. We all know that he's a woman. Actually,
he was in the Barbie movie after all.
Yeah. No, basically he's a woman. He's not even.
What are you gay, bro? What are you gay, bro? You doing the Barbie movie?
Exactly.
He has. But, he's a woman. He has the V clavicle, so it's conclusive. It's angled down.
Yeah, it's the scene. It's the scene in Crazy Stupid Love where he takes off his shirt in front of Emma Stone, and she is so in awe of his body that she exclaims in outrage that he looks so hot in person.
And it's because he's a woman.
Because Emma Stone is gay in that movie. That's the subtext we're supposed to pick up, is that Emma Stone is a lesbian in Crazy Stupid Love.
And then, so I just included this one because I thought this was just like a tasty little morsel of how insane some of these can be. So it's Joseph Stalin, famous woman.
Famous woman.
Famous woman, Joseph Stalin. So he's kind of got like a gay little saunter is like part of the evidence. He kind of walks a little gay. He's
a little fruity with it.
Like his pelvis is too womanly. So this person's theory was that, he's actually a cis woman pretending to be a man. That's how he got to where he is. Maybe that's part of the theory. Maybe, who knows? But these people, so this is just like the type of evidence. They just like look at people's like legs and like leg positions in photos, or like their pelvis, or like their face, and they draw lines, and they're like, yep, this is.
And
this is
I will
evidence.
say something that unites all three pieces of evidence here are like, I think that woman who was being called a man in the skull diagram thing, she was saying something about like getting the COVID vaccine or something in her video. These are people who are arguing for the equality of all people. Say what you will about Joseph Stalin, but that is what his nominal goal was. And like, you know, Ryan Gosling's a big lib and big feminist, and Farrah Fawcett was an outspoken feminist. It's like there is a uniting quality between these people, and it isn't their gender identity.
Oh, well, you'll see later on. We get to some people who are not like lefties or like libs.
Okay.
We get to some fun
Before
stuff.
we do, though, I have to say Joseph Stalin's female Q angle is a much less fun pet theory than femboy Nestor Magno.
I'm not familiar with this one.
So Nestor Magno, there's historical evidence for this, would frequently dress as a peasant woman. He was the leader of the Black Army, the like Ukrainian anarchist like fighting force that helped in the like Bolshevik revolution and everything.
Oh.
He would frequently go undercover into enemy villages disguised as a woman and like live there for a little while to like to get the lay of the land, quote unquote.
Do you think there were people in the villages? There were people in the
of
villages like drawing diagrams, like drawing pictures, like, is this like those were like the earliest transvestigators.
I'm gonna
like,
say he kind of
this?
looks like a woman. I think. I mean, he has pretty feminine features. He's not a pretty woman, but he is pretty.
We're doing our own transvestigations now. We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
But maybe he was trans and was just doing the Bugs Bunny thing of pretending to be a woman for absolutely no reason at all.
That's honestly my favorite theory, because like he was going places where like really nobody would recognize him if he put on like a hat and like a pair of glasses or something.
Guys, I think I'm gonna need to put
like,
on a dress. And what do you?
If he just let's like splash some flour into his facial hair, like nobody would have known it was him.
I mean, sort of in the same vein, we've seen like people freak out about John Fetterman having like glasses and a different beard.
Oh my god!
Like this
the
is
clone
the same
theory for John Fetterman is so funny.
Yeah, so it's
instead of just understanding how cameras work.
Yeah, or like changing like basic appearance.
Every
for,
single
like, just a day.
Every single one of those posts gets a community note that's like the focal depth of camera works, and then all the replies are like, they're lying to us about the cameras again. The fucking cameras. That's not how a camera works. My buddy told me how a camera works. That's not how it works.
My exasperated friend from high school that is about to cut contact with me because I'm so fucking annoying and like insane told me that cameras have different focusing angles.
But it doesn't even matter. Even if it's not the focal depth, they do try to investigate him being a different guy. Just like,
and I love that.
These are the people that would not suspect that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what made me realize, like, like a hat and glasses, like goofy glasses, absolutely would fool an entire city of people.
Yeah,
like, it's that simple.
That's why it's like worked as a disguise for so long. Like you as a person are abnormal if you can recognize somebody off of like their facial structure as opposed to like the general combination of features they have.
Like they're
right?
Just the vague shape they make as they approach you.
Exactly, right? Like if Wack shaved his mustache and put on a pair of glasses, I probably would not recognize him.
Yeah.
He could walk, he could show
like
up
those
to my
videos of,
house
like, a
and I would be like, who the fuck are you?
My next
If Wack did that, I'd start barking at him like a dog.
my next YouTube video, because I did get my hair cut. I have like a big mullet now. My next YouTube video, I need you guys to start claiming that I was switched with a body double.
You were cloned. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I can go with that.
The Wack clone. Yeah. We'll circulate that. We'll get that started. We'll get that in the Discord. Then I have just one last example of the lines, and this was another like recent famous case on Twitter that I just thought was amazing. So the post that reads, it's a picture of a woman and a man, and the caption reads, "Everywhere I go, I see women with no butts, big shoulders, and brow ridges. Men with big butts, sloping shoulders, and pretty eyes. Real men and women seem scarce." So basically, this person is accusing the cis woman, I would assume, and the cis man, I would assume, in this picture, to both be trans, I guess, based off of like lines that they superimposed, which also very
and the
strange
fact
to
that
take
they
a
stared
picture
at both of their asses for way too long.
This
and
is
a
the
creep shot of them from behind.
This
But-
right here is the Mrs. Puff SpongeBob meme with the trans people. You're just in a padded room, just surrounded
Like
by
screaming.
menacing trans people at this mom and pop coffee shop you went to.
But it's a paranoia of your own creation. You're the
Yeah.
one. You're the one staring at these people's asses, freaking out.
And what if they both are trans? What's going to happen to you? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it looks to me like they're buying coffee, pal, and then they're probably gonna leave, same as you. Like maybe we do control the world, but we still need some fucking caffeine every now and then.
Well,
you know?
we do control the world, but what? You can't do anything about it at this point. Just get your coffee.
Enjoy your coffee, man.
Yeah.
Eat the bugs.
Yeah.
Stay asleep in your pods.
Eat the bugs, live in the pods, drink your coffee, cheat on your wife.
Hell, cheat on your wife, you know?
All right, now we're kind of so after that, that's like the kind of stuff that these people look at. So now we're going into we kind of already touched on both of these. What I would say the two famous original cases of modern transvestigation. And Wack, I'm so glad you used the word hermaphrodite earlier, because I took a screenshot of a headline from an article from 2009 talking about the Lady Gaga incident, and the people I noticed at the time in like the late 2000s, early 2010s were very insistent and intentional with using the word hermaphrodite. And I just think it's very I just thought it was really interesting to see how that's changed in such a quick time. Like people don't really use that word anymore to like talk about trans people, which I just find fascinating.
It wasn't really trans people though. It was sort of like you have like a birth defect that is shameful, where you either have a very small penis or a very large clit. It was like it was like a different thing. There's like a I remember the singing comedian Stephen Lynch had a song about dating a hermaphrodite, and and I once found my brother's porn stash, which had a hermaphrodite DVD in it that I watched.
That's cool.
I think now we would just
So you
call
learned
them.
all about
I
their
think we would call them
hermaphrodites.
I think intersex is actually the real term.
Oh shit. Okay, that's like okay.
But
yeah.
Like that's basically what they were accusing Lady Gaga of, having some like weird dangly half-formed penis, not some like strong throbbing cock.
She's fucked up because she has a fucked up dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Caleb, you mentioned in that interview, like I think in that same interview that you brought up with Anderson Cooper, she mentions like I watched it earlier, but I think she mentions at one point basically being ambiguous about what she has, like what her genitals are.
Yeah, she does not
And
answer the question.
She just did not answer the question.
And Anderson Cooper the entire time is like, I have to know. Can I see your fucked up dick?
Yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting case, and I think my introduction to like this whole thing, and then we already talked about friend of the show Michael Obama, of course. That was a big one.
Mike and Barry.
Yep. and it seemed like on the brief research I did, it seemed like Alex Jones, of course, we can never escape the reality that he's created.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, he was kind of the maybe not necessarily the progenitor of that one, but he did popularize.
You know what I
absolutely.
think it actually comes from? I think the origin of the Michael Obama stuff is legitimately from the fact that like Amy Schumer and like the show Broad City, like popular culture facing feminists would talk about how strong Michelle Obama was and how beautiful her arms were. Like Michelle Obama's arms were like a real focus for a lot of people. And she didn't have particularly masculine arms, but I think a lot of like anti-Obama type guys really just sort of were like, well, she has man arms then. Her arms are nice because she's a man. That's why she looks so jacked. And it's like, nobody said she looked jacked. What are you talking about?
So in my brief research, it was, I think, a combination of that, but also from what I saw, it was a lack of like photos of her that people could find pre like
them being president,
Obama becoming senators, like in like the 2000s. Like people were like, why? Like we can't find anything of Michelle Obama before like 2000, like the year 2000. Like what?
Wow,
like,
that's crazy. You mean to tell me like the year of notoriously zero amounts of digital phones or cameras? There are not that many pictures of like people who do not have fame. That's crazy.
Yeah, because she was just like I forget exactly what she was, but she was not famous until she was like Barack Obama.
She was like a corporate lawyer or something. I mean, she's not like a
she was a lawyer.
It's like when Zoomers post images of like a 2006 high school and they're like, they all look so happy. I wish I could be in high school in 2006. And it's like, no, they're smiling because somebody pointed a camera at them. That's a novel thing. To have a camera pointed at you. That's actually weird to them.
Yeah.
That's why they're smiling.
That 2006 is the year before the iPhone was unveiled. Like cameras inside flip phones were shitty and like kind of a novelty anyways at this point.
And if it's a video that you recognize as like high enough quality that you can watch it on TikTok or whatever, I promise you it was a big fucking, they were not ignoring what was walking down the hallway. It was not.
Just as an aside, I do love those posts though when they find these old videos and they're like, oh yeah, like they're so it's like I think it's funny that we're already at a point where kids are like reminiscing, like there's like return people for like the 2000s. I think that's very scary.
It's so funny too because the 2000s were such a shitty time.
Yeah, like
that is why
I'm sure
that's why I liked teaching 9/11. It's a huge pain in the ass to do for so many different reasons, but like just showing the kids like the video and being like, I woke up one morning and this was just on the news.
I was snapping green beans in my grandma's cabin when I was like 5 watching cartoons, and my pawpaw slams his fist on the door and says, "Ain't you watching the news?" And I'm like, "No, bitch, I'm 5. I'm watching Dexter's Lab."
And I'm just like telling the kids,
and then like, just like the years after that of like a constant Fox News of being like, "We're at terror alert red," like you know what I mean? Like that sort of like societal anxiety that developed like post 9/11 is something like I know how things operated before 9/11 because I was like 8 or whatever before that shit happened, right?
Yeah. So and
it was so much more chill.
Yeah. So that's like when
like you would turn on the news and you'd see like a chyron at the bottom. It'd be like, oh yeah, somebody hit a home run at Fenley Park. Grand slam.
When you like
you look at that and you think, oh, neat.
When you teach this,
and that was it. Like, that was your reaction to the news.
When you teach this to kids who aren't like familiar with it at all, too, they're like, you can teach it as a totality. So then I would always be like to them, like, this is what it was like being in high school for me, which was definitely not as bad as the pandemic. But do you guys feel nostalgic for this time anymore? Do you guys want to go back to any of this shit that I just described to you? Because they were talking about bringing back the draft. How many of y'all trying to go to war today?
Oh, God. Oh no. Yeah, like as bad as things are right now, and things are pretty fucking bad.
They're pretty bad.
But I would absolutely rather be like right here, right now in this time than like the 2000s.
I think social media
to
has
be completely
changed
honest.
that so much because like there were no dissenting voices. There was no like discussion. There was no public need to talk about like the anti-war left or anything in the mid 2000s. And that is like something that is so much nicer now, is that like for whatever horrendous thing like the president is saying or the State Department is reporting, it is nice to know that like I can open up my phone and see normal people saying things that make sense to me. I don't have to rely on the insane lies of the government who just wants to funnel billions of dollars into our oil interests in the Middle East, which is the exact same thing that is happening in Israel right now. Do not make any mistake about what is actually taking place. If Iran meets with Saudi Arabia, we will sooner nuke Iran than allow diplomatic relations to resume between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
And it is really nice that we have social media and can see like what average people are saying.
Yes.
And like the best part about this is when you say like, oh, maybe Palestinians shouldn't be genocided. You get a gaggle of people being like, oh, so you're a member of Hamas, basically.
But that would be like your coworker in 2006 would be like, I don't think we should remain in Iraq. People would be like, oh, I didn't know you were in the Taliban. That's like, that's what your coworker would say to you.
So the method to get this discourse has just changed, basically.
Yeah. But it's also, it's a lot less scary because now it is just some fucking psycho on Twitter. It isn't like a guy who could tell your boss that you're a terrorist.
Well, it still could be. It could be. If it could be, depending on how psychotic these people are.
When I was 18 working at Lowe's, I actually got called into HR and wrote up for making a joke about a nuclear bomb, and I had to write and sign a piece of paper that said I would not bring a nuclear device to the store and blow it up.
That fucking rocks. I had to do something similar. It was some stupid thing where we were having a meeting and we had to redo some project we were working on. I said, if they make us redo this one more time, I'm going to fucking kill myself, or I'm going to throw myself off the Narrows Bridge. That's what I said. And the HR lady heard that, and they actually brought me into a meeting with her and the CEO. And they made me sign a piece of paper saying I wouldn't kill myself, but they made me sign a piece of paper saying I wouldn't kill myself on company property, which is a very important distinction to me.
I love that one especially because it's like, oh yeah, man, this like non-legally binding document that I would get fired for if I violated also requires that I be dead in order to violate it. Like,
and just don't do it on company property, dog.
Yeah, man.
Just do that on your own time.
Yeah,
and gotta be honest, we'd prefer if you did it on your own time because your Q3
do it on break.
Figuring out the payroll for that day would be kind of messy.
Awesome. Yeah. So Michael Obama, before we move on to the next fun stuff, there's just a picture of Michael Obama. He's a very handsome man. He looks
LaVaughn Robinson.
Big Mike.
Which,
Big
by
Mike,
the way,
Big Mike.
By the way, I'm gonna look this up right now. I'm
Big Mike.
Phil.
What are you looking up?
I am looking up. Fuck. What is the guy's name? Phil Lamar. Headshot. I am fairly certain that is a photoshopped Phil Lamar headshot, who's an actor.
Oh hell yes! Yeah, because like clearly, like this one is like kind of like this tweet. I like that. Of course, that reply is kind of a joke, but I think there are genuine people out there that think Michelle Obama probably is a man. Like we still see that talked about.
But I mean, like
day.
it's the same kind of person that was like also heavily into like the truther shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the like birth certificate
absolutely.
and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think that is an image of Phil Lamar, but Google Phil Lamar if you're at home. He used to be on Mad TV, but he's also a big time voice actor. And he was in Pulp Fiction. He got his head blown off in Pulp Fiction. And
that's cool.
That led to Quentin
in the opening scene.
Not in the opening scene. He is the dead black person that gave Quentin Tarantino the N-word pass for that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh god. But yeah, it kind of looks like him. I wonder if that was the impetus, but I can't find an original photo that looks the same.
It's the Twitter file.
That's it for the main feed episode of Western Kabuki. You can hear more of this episode with Ivy at patreon.com/Western Kabuki. There's another full hour of us going over this stuff. It gets real out there. Again, that's patreon.com/Western Kabuki. Thanks so much.
Was conspiring to silence right-wing voices, and they denied having done so.